Hey guys, welcome back to Magic TV. My name's Craig. It's 9 o'clock. It is a Saturday, which means it's time for a Talk Magic. And I have the interview that everybody has been waiting for. And I cannot wait to start this interview. The person I have on the channel today is somebody who has made a name for themselves as one of the most respected reviewers on YouTube. Somebody who has created, somebody who has really put so much into the community, and somebody I've had a relationship with for the last few years. You've all been waiting for this interview, and I cannot wait to do it. Genuinely, I am, of course, speaking to Mr. Unbiased Magic Reviews himself, the one and only David Laden. How you doing, David? You okay?
Hi, I'm good. Thanks for having me on, Craig.
Man, I'm so excited. And look, I've spoken to you off camera, and we've both agreed we want to make this interview about you. We don't want to dwell on what's happened in the past. But I think if we don't address it, I think people will be just like, hey, they've swept it under the carpet. So for people that don't know, myself and David over the last few years have had kind of an up and down rocky relationship. I have thrown my toys out of the pram more than once and acted very, very immaturely. I will say that on camera, and I will admit that a lot of the stuff that I've done has been stupid. David has, made reviews on my products in the past, and I took it very, very badly and made videos that I shouldn't have made. And I've said this before, I'm going to say it right now on this channel. I want to make a public apology to David for anything that I've done to upset him. And the reason that we're here right now is because of David, because uh, just a couple of weeks ago, he reached out to me, and I'll never forget the title of the email. It was An Olive Branch, and he talked about how this back and forth between me and him had gone on way too long, and it was kind of very, very toxic. And I remember getting that while I was sitting in a hotel room in Columbus, and we immediately rang and spoke, realized that actually we've got a lot more in common than we thought, and we said we're going to draw a line under it and start again. And I want to thank you for that, David. I know we wanted to address it at the beginning. We don't want to dwell on what's happened between us, but from my point of view, thank you for coming on the channel. Thank you for being interviewed. And genuinely, anything that I've said and done in the past, I apologize.
Well, thanks, Craig. I just want to say too that I think that it was, a two-way road. Obviously, there was, a lot of negative things that were coming from like my channel and stuff. And, the issue is that it takes two people to argue. And even though sometimes you may see things in a different way, the problem is it spiraled into like personal attacks back and forth. And I started to realize that this was very unhealthy for both of us, and especially because it was getting people's families involved. And
Mm.
I just realized that this is not what magic is about. Magic is really about what the spectators experience. And so even though we magicians, we may agree to disagree on things, ultimately the real judge is the spectator always. And there's really no such thing as a bad effect. I mean, any effect can entertain somebody, right? And that's the thing. And some effects are more for some people than for others. And
Yeah.
that's why it is so difficult to even review magic like what we do.
Hmm.
Because even though I try to, say that I'm unbiased because, I'm not pushed to give a positive review, I still have my own biases. We all do.
Yeah.
And it's very difficult to be completely objective.
Yes. Yeah, I completely agree with that. And we found out there's a lot that me and David have got in common. It's very difficult to run a review show. It really is. There's a lot more behind the scenes that you would possibly think, especially when you put the level of detail into it that David does. I mean, you're known for your research and your crediting and your historical knowledge, and that comes across in a lot of your videos. We both love magic, obviously, and I think we both want to make magic more of it. Yeah, I spoke to somebody once, many, many years ago, and he said, you know what? My goal in magic is to leave it in a better place than it was before I came into it. And I've always thought that was a really cool thing to say. And that's what I want to do as well. And over the last few years, there's many times that I've kind of lost sight of that. And I'm pushing forward with a completely different approach to this. So yeah, thanks for giving me the chance to do that. And with that all being said, I am so looking forward to this interview because a lot of the time when I interview people, I kind of know a lot about them. And although obviously I've probably watched more of your videos than most people, I think I've watched everything. I still don't know a lot about you. And so I'm getting excited. I'm really excited to kind of find out more about you and what makes you tick. And I'm going to ask the first question now, David. And it's the first question I
Okay.
always ask everybody, which is
Right.
what's your origin story? How did you get into magic? Because we've all seen you on Unbiased right from the very beginning. And initially, we didn't know your name was David. We'll get to that later on. But, I know you've been in magic for a very, very long time, but I don't know where it all started. So, what was the catalyst? What's your origin story? What got you into magic initially?
Well, what happened was I was maybe like a young teenager, and what I saw was on TV. There was a magic special, and I'm trying to remember exactly who it was. It may have been David Copperfield or something, and it was like I just happened to be watching the television at the time, and it was like time for a commercial. And what he did basically was he took a deck of cards and he said, "I'm gonna just show you guys this deck. I want you to think of one card you see." And he just flashed the cards, and then when they came back from the commercial, they told everybody, they said, "I think the card you saw was such and such." And then I was like, "Wait a second, how's that possible?" And that was it for me. And then I went to the local library and I literally read almost every book that I could find there on magic. And it took me quite a while to find the answer. And then when I found the answer, that was just a short card, I was like, that's so stupid simple, but so effective. And then I showed it to every person I could. And I got the same kind of reactions that I had. And then I was like, oh, that's pretty simple. What else can I do? And that was it. Like after that, and just like most people, you start out with like gimmick decks. I think the first deck I bought was like a Svengali deck or a stripper deck. And then after a while, then you start to tackle these books and you start to read about techniques that at first they're a complete mystery because you read about the past and you're looking at these diagrams in a book and you're like, what the heck is that? What am I looking at?
Yeah.
Right. But and it's funny because in the beginning, everything I learned was from books in the very beginning because there really wasn't video instruction then. It took a while before video instruction started to come out. And then it was all VHS tapes.
Yeah.
So and that was it. That's how it all started.
Wow. Now, on that subject, I want to ask you another question. Obviously, anybody who's watched Unbiased Magic Reviews will know that you're a doctor, and that's your full-time thing. And obviously, you perform socially, you perform to friends and family and colleagues and patients and so on and forth. We'll get to that later on. Was there ever a moment when you were a teenager getting into magic where you were thinking, you know what, I want to be a performer, I want to perform, or was it always this is a great hobby?
I think it was always just like that. This was more of a hobby because I was learning magic at the same time that I was really learning medicine and even going in that route. Because even in college, I would perform for friends, anyone that I could come in contact with in college. I was constantly performing for them. Um, but I was always kind of going down this path that I was going down, and but magic was just a good way to relieve stress
Yeah,
and I think it was just the dynamic that you had with people because it was a very easy way to get close to people.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. In fact, I'd love to get your opinion on this. I think sometimes people that perform socially, like hobbyists and amateurs and social performers, I think they're almost looked down on sometimes. And I've made the point many, many times that I think some of the best magicians in the world are people that don't perform professionally, like John Bannon, for example. I know you love John Bannon as well. Like he's a person who's never performed professionally, and he's incredible. Like I think that when you become a professional performer, I know I've done this. I have to make sacrifices. There's certain types of magic that I would love to perform, but if I'm going to a gig and I've got to get around 200 people in an hour and a half, I can't do that magic. While somebody who's a hobbyist, somebody who doesn't have that, they can perform the magic that they want to do. What do you think about people's viewpoints about hobbyists versus professionals?
Right. Well, there's a number of professional magicians that I converse with like all the time, and they
Yeah,
always tell me like, David, I do the same effects. I've done the same effects for 20 years. And they're like, it's very rare that I'm going to add something new because why would I do that? What I
Mm.
use works perfect. And I have, you know, this is what I perform. I go and I do my show, or I go and do the venue that I'm hired to do. And I have my set effects. So I don't have to think, I just go right through it. Whereas like hobbyists, you have the luxury that you can, like, I try to, like, you know, just experiment with stuff. And I'm like, let's try this, let's try that. And not just that, but I can spend a lot of time practicing one effect, one move to try to master it, you know,
Yeah.
until it becomes second nature because I'm not pressured that I have to go and perform. So in your free time, you're like working on something, you know, you're working on, you know, you're working on a pass, you're working on, you know, a control, you're working on something and you're just getting better at it. Right. And so, you know, so in that way, I think that it is kind of an advantage if you're a hobbyist. I mean, I think all of us though have different skill levels. So, and I see it even in medicine, you know,
Really?
oh yeah, because like we do procedures in the hospital, right? And some of us are really good at them. Like, you know, over the last 10 years, I mean, I must have done 1,000 lines, 600 intubations. During the COVID years, I intubated 65 people myself, like 65 COVID patients I put on the ventilator. And it's hand-eye coordination. And
Mm,
some people are better than others at hand-eye coordination. It
mm.
just is what it is. And I think it's the same thing in magic, where some people have the dexterity, other people not so much. All of us have some basic dexterity. And of course, with practice, probably almost anything could be learned at some level, right?
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. So, what would you say? I want to ask you a question I get on my channel all the time. I think it'd be really useful to ask you this. I get a lot of people that don't perform professionally, and they say, you know, I feel myself falling out of love of magic because I'm only ever, I buy a trick or I buy a book, I learn the trick, I perform it to my wife, I perform it to my friends, and then, you know, I kind of then go on and learn another trick, and it's kind of so on and so forth. And I get asked for advice. How can you know, how can I almost regain the love of magic again? Or how can I go out and perform to more people as somebody who doesn't do professional gigs? That would be a perfect question to put to you, David, like, because I know how passionate you are about magic. I know how much you love magic, but also at the same time, you don't go out and gig professionally. So what advice would you give to somebody that like A wants to perform more, or B feels like they're losing the passion? Like, what would you do to invigorate that?
Yeah, I think sometimes it's not a bad idea to just walk away for a little while and take a break. Just because sometimes if you just are too much into it, you can get burnt out. And I've gotten burnt out from just reading and reading and reading magic. And really, I think that part of the issue is that we're always looking for the next best thing. But
Yeah,
sometimes people don't realize that you already have really good effects, you know. And I think that part of the problem is that a lot of magicians never really master an effect where they can do it with their eyes closed without even thinking. And so I think sometimes people will give up because if they don't learn it fast enough, they get frustrated.
yeah,
And then the next new thing comes out and it's like the next shiny object. They want to like jump to that, you know? And so, and it's hard to explain exactly, but I do think though that if you do go and perform more, though, that does invigorate you because that's what works for me always is, and it's actually funny because I have like an Easter gig coming up in 2 days, which
okay.
it's actually like unofficial. It's just like, you know, it's just for some kids here in our neighborhood. Like we have an HOA, and so I told them I was going to perform for them and for, you know, family members and stuff. But again, it's not like a paid gig. It's just something that you just like as a hobbyist does just for fun.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
So kind
So
of go out there and look for opportunities to go and to perform to people. That's what.
right, or even just do it while you're waiting in the line in the supermarket. You know, like the propless mentalism.
Actually, on that, let me ask you a question. So I remember having the conversation with you when we first spoke on the phone, and you were talking about doing magic in hospital to patients and it relaxes them. And I made
Right.
the comment that you sound a little bit like Patch Adams, from the Robin Williams, obviously famously portrayed. How, like, how uh, d- can you talk a little bit about working in a hospital and magic and how that actually helps with like your career and calming patients down? And I'd love to hear more about that if we could.
Yeah, sure. So a lot of the patients I take care of are critically ill, like really sick people. And so those people, in general, I don't do too much with them.
Mm,
But patients that are more stable, there's a lot of people that come in the hospital for something simple. They may come in like for something like cellulitis. They need antibiotics for like 4 or 5 days. They're stuck in the hospital, right? They're bored out of their mind, right?
mm,
So that kind of patient is perfect because then when I go and see them, I introduce myself and very quickly I'll do something for them. And really my go-to thing is I tell them, I say to them, oh, let's do an observation test. Like I'm going to do a mental acuity test. And I say to them, okay, when's your birthday? Right. And then they'll tell me their birthday. And then I'll say, okay, what day of the week was it this week? That's the first test. And then they won't know it. They'll be like, oh, I don't know, or whatever. And then I'll tell them what it was. And then I'll say, okay, double or nothing. What day of the week were you born? And then again, they'll be, and it really does very quickly enable you to get close to the person because this is personal information about them. And then based on how they react, I'll do more for them. Like I'll say, okay, let's try something, you guys. And then I'll take out my business cards or something and whatever. And a lot of times the family members that are in the room, they'll get into it too. You know,
really?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, they'll get into it too. And it really, it's from my perspective, what I find that works the best is when I interact with both the patient and their family member. And
Mm,
just over the years, I've realized that what I call the two spectator theory, which is that when you perform for two people at the same time, it's just a lot stronger than just one, always. For some reason, no matter what it is, card magic, especially mentalism. Like, I almost don't want to perform mentalism one on one. I almost want to just do it with two people at the same time because it's so much stronger. Because whatever they think is the method is gone
mm,
because it's
yeah.
with two people. It's too complicated. It's like that's not possible. So, but yeah, but using it in the hospital is very, very useful because you go in the room, these people are scared. They're worried what you're going to tell them. Doctors come in the room, they're going to tell me I have cancer. They're going to tell me that, I'm having a heart attack, I'm having a stroke, something like that. And so it does definitely help calm them down. But it is interesting because the props that you use in the hospital, I mean, I have used a deck of cards before, especially if they have a deck with them there in the hospital. But in general, I try to use just like very organic props, things that you just would have on you, rubber bands, business cards, billets, these kinds of things, or nothing, just mental,
Wow.
right?
I've seen you perform rubber band magic on your channel, but I kind of think of you as a mentalist. So I know you do everything. I know you do everything, but I think of a lot of. Would you say that you kind of gravitate more towards mentalism than magic? What do you prefer?
Well, with my patients, because most of them are older, right? So these
Mm,
people are like 80 years old, 70 years old. And so they've seen a lot of things.
mm,
So, like, if I were to take out like a sponge ball and make it vanish, like, that's probably not going to impress them. It would if it was a 12-year-old kid, right?
yeah,
If it
yeah.
was a little kid. But these older folks, it's different. Like, if I take out my business card, and one effect that I do almost with every patient is I write down on my business card or on a billet, I'll write down something else. I'm going to write something down. We're going to get back to this in a moment. And I say to them, if you could go to any country in the world, where would you like to go? And they'll name it. And then I'll tell them, oh, okay. Well, that'd be crazy, right? Here, maybe I shouldn't give this to you. I always try to play it up. And then when they see that I've written down the country that they named, everyone reacts different. Some patients, they get real quiet. Other patients, they freak out. I had this one patient that he told me, oh, you had access to my military record, didn't you? I was like, what are you talking about? He's like, you knew I was stationed in Germany, didn't you? And I was like, no. So it's just funny to see the reactions, because when you show somebody something that's so impossible that it doesn't make sense. And again, it's because you're so far ahead of them. They can't even catch up, right? It's
Mm.
like they know what's going to happen. They realize it, right? They realize that, oh my God, somehow what I said is going to end up on that. But they can't comprehend how it's possible. It just blows them away. And then later on, they ask for you. Like the next day, the nurse will say, oh, that patient is asking for you. They want to know when you're coming back. And I'm like, oh no, I admitted them to the hospital. There's another doctor that's going to see them during the day. I just brought them in. But they're like, no, they're waiting for you to come back and do more for them, which is hilarious.
But that's awesome that you can put they're in a hospital. It's not, I hate being in a hospital. And you know, I know a lot of people do, and the fact that you can put people at ease and actually get them excited to want you to go back over, that's great. You know, that's fantastic.
Even sometimes when the nurse is in the room with you, right? The nurse is in the room and
Hmm.
they start watching, and then they're like, what the heck? Like you could just see that they're just as amazed too, which is hilarious, you know?
That's awesome. Now, I want to ask you something about this because you mentioned earlier on about telling people the year that the you know their day that they were born on their birth.
Right, right.
I've seen you talk about that on your channel many, many times as kind of like
Yeah.
one of your main kind of things that you do to open up. And I can imagine that being an incredible sort of conversation starter, a great icebreaker. I do a lot of business networking, and I could imagine that being such a great thing to just open a conversation.
Yeah.
I've been in magic for 30 years, David. I've never heard of that. Like, is that something
Really?
you developed? Is that like an incredible memory from your point of view, or is that something that is learned?
No, no. So what happened was this was that there was a book that was out that was by Chris Brown, right? It was his Rain Man algorithm. I couldn't buy it because it's sold out. He only had 100 copies, sold out. So I didn't get it, right? And then after the fact, I tried to find a used copy, could never find it, could never find it. So you know what I did? I started looking for how to learn the effect. So I bought a bunch of different versions that exist out there. Like there's day one, there's there's a lot of there's actually a version in Corinda, believe it or not.
Wow, I didn't know.
Yeah, there's a version in Corinda. But the problem is that all of those versions were too slow for me.
Mm,
They were too difficult. And
mm,
so for me, like in terms of what I need to be fast.
yeah.
I need to be where I don't even need to think. You understand where I'm coming from,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
And
Yeah,
like
100%.
and like that's what impresses a person, is that you're able to get to it quick. Like I'm going to give you an example of what I mean, right? Like for instance, when's your wife's birthday, for instance? I don't know anything about her, right?
Yeah, no, no, you don't know anything.
Right.
It's the 31st of May. Uh,
The 31st of May, right? So it's going to be a Saturday this year. Do you see how fast I did that?
bloody hell. It is. I know it is as well because I planned her birthday.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
crazy.
But do you see what I'm trying to say? Like this is the speed you have to move at. Do you see that the speed I'm talking about? Like that.
Yeah,
That's the speed. Like faster than Google. Faster than Google. You see what I mean? But you
yeah.
have to understand too is I've been doing this for a long time. So it's actually interesting because I don't know if my method is very similar to what Chris Brown came up with. I don't know because I don't even know his method, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but yeah, so my method does rely heavily on memorization and, of course, some calculations, because obviously you realize like I love calculations as well.
Mm.
So, but I mean, it's funny because several people have asked me if I would ever release it and stuff. And I don't know, maybe sometime in the future. Who knows? I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's one of
It's
those things, you know.
very impressive. It's very, very impressive. It really is.
To be that quick, right? Well,
Yeah,
I've been doing it for a long time, man. So you have to think about that, right? Doing it
that's
for a long time, you know what I mean?
the more you
So
do something, the better you get at it, I suppose. That's very true. Um, okay. So I want to ask you, I want to go onto YouTube in a minute. I want to talk about your channel, but before we do, let me ask you one more question.
sure.
Um, how do you like I'd love to get your opinion. This is another question that I get asked a lot. how do you make a trick your own? Because on a lot of your reviews, you talk about making tricks your own, and how would do you have any advice on, it's that standing joke, isn't it? Like a new person getting into magic, if they're trying to do a magic trick, the first trick they do will be in the style of Jay Sankey, then in the style of Bill Malone, then in the style, how do you take a magic trick and make it your own?
I guess I just think about what I want it to be like. Like I'll give you a good example so you can see, right? So I actually thought about this because I thought about like if you were to ask me something similar to this. And so, it's actually funny because like I have here like these are some old ones now I have because this has evolved over the years. And what it is that I've thought about how to present an effect that's very organic, very quick. And what I wanted something that looked and felt like real mind reading, but that you know what I mean. And so what I've done was I've taken my business cards here, and then I can show the spectators that I can say to them, look, you can see here that I've got all kinds of different questions on each of these on each of these, right? You can see I got all kinds of different questions. And so what ends up happening is that I go through it like that, let them look at them, and then I say, we're going to use two of you. And I say, look, I'm just going to go like this. Just say stop. They say stop, and then I'll show them the question, and you're going to see what the question is, right?
Yep.
So
Yep.
that's one person, and then the next person, I'll just say, you say stop, the same exact, and then that person's going to get a totally different question, right? It's
Yep.
going to be a totally different question, and then I'm going to say, okay, you guys, I'll just put them away. That's it. That's all I have to do. Now I'm going to tell them, okay, you guys think about your answer. You guys each have a different question. Send it to me mentally, and that's it. And now I'm just going to start. I'll just go right through my anagram in 2 seconds, and I know exactly what each person's thinking of. Just reveal it in real time. And so this was my idea of how to do this in an organic way for two people at the same time, where absolutely impossible, and you can see, and that's like one very basic, simple effect that I still use it. Came up with that years ago because it was after I started using the Sven pad. The Sven pad was cool, but I was like, it's not as organic as I want it to be. I want it to be even more organic, and I want it to feel like so carefree. And that was my solution to it. It was like basically starting with what do you want it to do, and then working backwards.
That's great. That's really, really good. I love that idea. That's fantastic.
And it's very easy because in that way I just by the time I get to the third letter I know exactly what one person's thinking of and the other one, and I've experimented with different questions and stuff, and I've come up with all kinds of different things. And so you could even make it even like for three people instead of just two, but two people is very impressive because you know what the problem is this, Craig. In effect like the Sven pad, if you do it, they'll want to see it again, right?
Mm,
Because
yeah.
maybe they'll think something. But with this, when I've showed them that every question is different, first I show it to them. I let them read a couple of them that say, look, they're all different, right? Yep, they're all different. Like, here, I'm gonna have you just choose any question, just say stop. It's totally fair because from here I just go to the next person and just continue. All right, here you say
Yeah.
stop. So there's no force because it's so carefree and it's so fast because people don't have an attention span. People, they'll only sit and watch for like a few moments and that's it, and then they're bored, they're already on their phone, they're on their phone in 2 seconds. So with this, I'm like, okay, you guys have a question, you're thinking of your answer. I couldn't know your question, right? No, so there's no way I could know the answer even if I knew your question, and they have to say yep, that's right. And so now you just go right into it, and in 2 seconds I know their answers, and that's it. I can just reveal it to them, and that's it, and you're good to go. But it was very impressive to people, and you can see why this is like a staple for me, this kind of thing. And I just have to just carry around with me my business cards. I could
Yeah, the
even
amount
leave
of
them with the card, Craig. Like I could even give it to them. They say stop, and I could say, here, take the card, and you too stop here, take the card, and they could just keep the card. I don't need the card. I'll just put another one in its place, and that's it. We're done. That's
that's
it.
the amount of cards, the possibilities, that's mind-boggling. Like,
Yeah.
have you like that's better than so much stuff that I've seen. Like, have you ever considered lecturing, like, at all? Because that it is great, and I know that there's lots of other things that you do that you could very easily do a lecture. Like, is it something that you've ever thought, that's something
Not
you'd like to do?
Yeah, not really. Well, because you have to understand, I just do magic really for people around me, you know what I mean, and stuff. And so you have to understand that before the any card any number effect, I really never planned on ever really releasing magic, but I showed it to a bunch of magicians and they were like, oh, you need to release that. That's so good. That looks really good. You got to release it, this and that. And so that was like, and it was Don Juan that said to me, oh, you got to charge people for that. Because before that, I used to give away magic on my channel as a prize to contests. Like I gave away a couple of things that I came up with. And then and it was Don Juan that said, oh, if you don't charge people, they'll never respect you. And I was like, I guess you're right, Don. He's like, it'll just be lost in obscurity if you don't. So but that was really the only thing I ever really released. I mean, I've thought about putting out other stuff and, I don't know, it's an interesting idea, Craig, even the idea maybe one day write a book or something, who knows?
I would love to see a book. I really genuinely would. I think that would be amazing. But I think you should consider lecturing as well. I think that a lot of people would love to see a lecture. I mean, the fact that you've got so many subscribers, the fact that you've got so many people that love your thoughts, and it just shows that there's a market out there. There really is.
Right. But you could see that it's because I have the time as a hobbyist to think of effects,
Yeah.
right? Because I'm not pressured to go out and perform. So I can sit at home and I can think of, how am I going to make this effect stronger? How am I going to make this better for my spectators? And then I'll think about it and then come up with more ideas and brainstorm and try to think of it. And a lot of times I will show stuff that I'm working on to magicians that I know, magicians that I trust. And then I'll get feedback from them. They'll be like, oh, yeah, that looked really good. Or I don't know, David,
Hmm.
I'm sure you experience the same thing, right?
Yeah. And on the subject of that, how do you approach creativity? Because one of the things that I've found since I started my channel is people want to be a creator in magic. That's kind of a goal for a lot of people. We look at the creators in magic, and a lot of the time we put them on pedestals, and they're like, "Well, I want to have a product or that I want to have some sort of thing with my name on." How do you approach creativity if you want to create a trick? What sort of process do you go through?
I guess I just think about what I want the effect to be. I think about what I want the end result to be, and then just try to work backwards from there. And then a lot of times I'll just improve effects that exist, but that everybody does that. Everybody
Yeah.
improves effects that
Sure.
exist, right? But in terms of like a new effect, I just try to think about, and there's a lot of effects out there that you could like rack your head thinking about it. Like I've come up with at least 5 different types of drawing duplication effects where I would think about the effect and I would think, how am I going to do this? And then I would think about it. I need to do it. How do I do it where all the movements are natural? How do I do it where the spectator will never, ever suspect that I looked at their card? How do I do it where they draw something and it's on the table and I never touched that? So that's like the criteria I'm setting for myself. And then I start thinking about every single method that you could come up with, anything and everything. You start to just brainstorm. And a lot of times, here's what's crazy. A lot of times I won't figure it out. I'll go to sleep. I won't figure it out. Next day I'll wake up, no idea. Weeks down the road, I don't know. You're in the store, all of a sudden you see something and there it goes in your head. That gave you the idea of how you're going to do it. And you're like, oh my God, I never even considered that. Like, that's such a great idea. Like, you just came up with it out of the blue. Because I think that if you try to force it, it won't come to you. You have to like kind of like get your brain thinking about it and then let your brain work by itself. Even when you go to sleep, I'm sure you've had it where you wake up and you got a bright idea like, oh,
Yeah.
I got an idea exactly how I'm going to do this.
Yep. Yep. And it's almost like your brain's been working overnight and it's
Right.
got the solution for you when you
It's the
woke up.
subconscious. It's the
Yeah.
subconscious mind working on its own because we're constantly trying to figure out, how am I going to get one ahead? How am I going to work from one behind? Especially because think about mentalism, specifically mentalism. There's not a whole lot of effects in mentalism, and so the principles and the methods have been beat to death, right? So to come up with new methods are difficult. It's not easy, right? You have
No.
to think outside of the box. You have to
Yes.
try to detach yourself from what exists already.
Hmm. That's very difficult to do. Yeah, very, very difficult. Man, I want to circle back to this in a minute, but first of all, let's talk about your YouTube channel because obviously
Okay.
it's very, very successful. I want to ask you a question first of all. You're a busy guy. You work full time as a doctor. You have an incredible, I mean, I've told you how much respect I have for what you do, but you also are very active as a hobbyist. You're performing an awful lot. You like creating magic. What made you start the YouTube channel? Because it's so much work doing YouTube, especially when you put the due diligence in that you do. And it wasn't because you wanted to become famous in the industry, because for the longest time on your channel, we didn't even know who you were. Like you were
Oh, right.
anonymous, right? You
Yes.
didn't know you as David from Unbiased Magic Reviews. We didn't know anything. So what made you decide to set up the channel, and what made you decide to kind of almost like not have your identity as part of it?
Yeah, well, because back in the day, I mean, like everyone, I think we used to watch the Wizard product review. Like obviously, everybody watched the Wizard product review, right? But then there was a lot of YouTube channels that popped up,
Yeah,
and many of them were just people that were unboxing magic. And so when I would watch that, it was frustrating because I knew that a lot of those effects were not the best effects. I knew, like, I would immediately, I'd be watching those reviews and I'd be like, oh, this is better, this is better, this is better. Like in my mind, I was thinking that. And so I thought to myself, you know what? I'm going to start a channel myself and I'm going to call myself Unbiased Magic Reviews because, and my angle will be that I'm unbiased because I buy all my own magic. And because I'm not being supplied with magic, I can give an honest opinion. Like I could literally say whatever I want
yeah,
because I don't have to worry about the magic company getting mad at me, which I don't know. Nowadays, they probably don't even care what a magic reviewer says, is as long as they're saying something, right?
yeah.
Right. In general. But back then, I was like, I'm going to try to like bring honesty to this. This was my goal, right? This was my thought process. Realistically, though, of course, I had my own biases, right? Because you have what you think is good and bad, right?
Yeah.
But then I would started doing my review channel, and I did like stay anonymous with the idea that because I realized a lot of the reviews I was doing were not the most positive. So I thought, I mean, I didn't attack anyone's character, but at the same time, I was saying that their product wasn't good. And
Yeah.
just like Tom Parkin always said to me, David, when you call somebody's baby ugly, like that's not nice. and
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it is true, I mean, and so here and there be some effects out there, and as a reviewer, that there are some effects out there that we could say are a cash grab, right? There are
Oh,
those.
yeah. Yeah.
There's effects out there where somebody has tweaked something and it's like it really is the same effect. It's not really an improvement on it. It's not anything novel, and so I wanted to try to at least provide a channel where people could watch it and say, am I going to waste my money on that? So they could watch it and say that. And I had the luxury that I didn't have to produce and I have to make a lot of videos all at once. I could take my time and make one video a week, one
Yeah.
video every 2 weeks. And when you do that, you can really do your own research and you can road test everything well. And you could say, this is good because of this reason. And then things just kind of got a little bit once I did that for a while, I realized that, oh, I could even do like a top 5 review, you know.
Which is some of my favorite videos on your channel, your top five. I have learned about
Oh,
so many
thanks.
tricks I didn't even know existed.
Yeah,
With
those take the most amount of time to do, Craig, because first of all, I have to go back through my own notebooks. And like in the very beginning, when I first started studying magic, I never kept notes because my memory was so good back then. I could remember everything, right? I mean, even now, there's a lot of things I can remember, but not like back then. I mean, like my anagrams, I know them like the back of my hand, right? Like those effects that rely on mental prowess, those things, because I use them all the time. But these old effects that I've read in, in Genie magazine from 30 years ago, I already forgot a lot of those. I'm like, oh, wait, I know this effect, but where did I read it? And you're like, damn, I can't remember. And I'm sure you've had it happen to you where you can't remember where you saw an effect, but you know the effect, you just don't remember the name of it or where you
Yeah,
saw it.
yeah, yeah. I have that a lot. Especially as I've got older. I've found it more difficult to remember. I used to, same as you, I used to be able to cite, oh, this is in this book and this page, and I can't do that as much these days, to be perfectly honest. But I know exactly where you're coming from. So you so the channel became more and more and more popular, and at some point you then, everyone knew your identity and so on and so forth, which is great, and it's continued to grow and it's continued to grow, and like you say, what made you decide to stop being exclusively about reviews and start talking about, like, top five of this, or this is the best thing to do with this, or what made you kind of shift it?
I just was experimenting because I wanted to see what people were interested in. And so I could gauge the viewer's interest on how many views the video got, how many comments it got. And so I'll give you an example, right? I started doing magician reviews where I would like look at a magician and I would pick out like 10 of their effects that I thought were like their best effects, right? So like, and I even demonstrated some of them in those reviews too. So I did one on Michael Vincent. I did one on Gabby Pereira's because, many magicians didn't even know that Gabby Pereira's existed. Because if you think about it, this Spanish world of magic, some of that is hidden behind
Mm,
Spanish. So people
yeah.
that don't speak Spanish don't even look at that stuff. And even like Gabby Pereira's, I mean, in the general, I mean, he's a legend, but a lot of magicians didn't even know he existed. You know what I mean?
Mm,
And so, but what I noticed though, and this was strange, was that people were not as interested in it as I thought because it didn't get as many views as I thought, which I was like shocked because I thought, wow, that's crazy that this didn't get as many views. For some reason, people are most interested in the latest shiny thing.
mm.
For some reason, this is what I've come to realize because even I even did those. You remember that, like those worker reviews?
Yes,
You're
yes,
right,
yes.
right. I did these reviews where I would say like this is an effect that's like a worker for me, right? Like this, for instance, right? Like this is a worker. Why? Because I use it all the time. Works great. This is what you're looking for, right? Instead of sitting there and buying all this magic, watching lectures, watching all this stuff, and then saying, "Oh, I didn't get anything out of that. I'm not going to use anything from all that stuff that I just bought and looked at." So I thought, oh, I'm going to show people like I did a worker review on a Patrick Page effect, right? And
Okay.
and and I was like, you're like, here's Patrick Page's book, right? You know, and it's a massive tomb, right? It's a massive tomb, and there's a lot of good stuff in there. But here's one thing that's in there that's absolutely incredible. And I did a demonstration with a spectator with a family friend, and I did the thing. And it's interesting because those reviews got some interest, but again, nowhere near the interest level of like the latest shiny thing for whatever reason. People are most interested in that, which is strange.
It is strange. So why do you think that is? Because there's such, like you could never buy another trick again. Yeah, like if you stopped buying every release that came out from this point and you just bought stuff that came out from years gone by, you could have an incredibly successful career as a performer because there's so much good magic that's been released over the last 100 to whatever years. So why is it that people are gravitating towards the latest thing?
I think it's because they just think that it's an improvement on what exists in the past. But you're right, because there's so much magic that has been buried and really good magic. There are incredible effects that are buried in the literature that people have forgotten about. Maybe when they came out, they were popular for a small amount of time, and then they got forgotten about. They got left behind kind of in the literature, unfortunately.
It's great. It's like that old expression, isn't it? If you want a secret kept hidden, publish it in a book.
Right, right. Because it takes a lot of work to go through those books.
Mm.
right?
What do you prefer, books or video? Uh,
I guess it depends on what it is, because if it's like a really difficult move, right, then I think that a video is very helpful. I'll give you an example, like Ben Earl's material, right?
mm,
Watching him teach it, right, in slow, like up close in his hands, so much easier to learn than if you read his books, right?
yeah.
But there's so much good material in old books. Like, for instance, like mentalism, like the best mentalism is found in old books. You'll get really good ideas, just routining ideas and stuff like that that people they forgot about it. It's like it just is, they just don't look at it anymore. Look at the Jinx. Like people
Yeah.
don't read the Jinx. Bascom Jones Magic magazine. That's like it's just a gold mine of stuff in
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, it really is. I've got leather-bound copies of every single Abracadabra magazine, which was like a weekly periodical in the UK from the 1960s all the way through to when it finished in 2012 or something. And I've got every single edition. And one of my favorite things
Wow.
to do is to just open up somewhere randomly from the 1950s or something and just read and just look at, and some of the ideas that they're publishing in this magazine from like 70 years ago is as good as, if not better than anything that's coming out today.
Right, exactly. And that's the thing, is that the hardest part is trying to compile this in a way that is easily accessible. You know what I mean? And so I've tried at least to present some magic for people to expose them to it, of things that I've come across. The problem is I'm only one person, and so there's only so much that you yourself have read and stuff like that. And that's why I consult a lot with older magicians that have a lot more experience than me. And like when I do those top 5 reviews, I will ask them like, hey, what do you think is the best open prediction effect? Like what is it that you've used for the last 40 years, right? And then they'll tell me, and then stuff like that, and go back and forth, because that's the best way to really compile information, not just do research, but ask people that know what they're know their stuff. But
That's
all that takes a lot of work. Obviously, it takes time, right?
does. And that's the thing that a lot of people don't realize about YouTube. It takes a lot of time to put, like I say, especially when you put so much research into it like you do. And you've got a full-time job like you do. It's very difficult to, run a channel and keep up that consistent output.
Right. And that's probably the most, like probably the secret for success on YouTube. If you notice that the YouTube channels that are most successful are the ones that constantly put out content. And if you can put out good content, even better, obviously,
Yeah.
right? Content that people are interested in, that's, you know, I mean, I've watched some of your, your magic news and stuff.
Yeah.
Like you put out these magic news videos, and
Yeah.
there's a lot of stuff that you talk about that, if you're not in the industry, you wouldn't know about.
Yeah.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And so all of that kind of stuff is like, I think that's very useful to people. So,
Oh, yeah. Thank you. Mate. Thank you. Here's a question for you that I think it'd be great to hear your opinion on. I've had quite a lot of people in the past ask me, what's the best way to read a magic book? Because especially if it's a big book, right, it can be very overwhelming. It's like, do you read it like a book and just go trick by trick, or do you just pick out the tricks that you like? Like if you've just bought a new book and it's a really big, thick book.
right. Like Alan Ackerman's All In, for instance, right?
Yeah, I mean, well, that's
Right.
2 volumes, isn't it? I mean, you've got
Yeah.
both of them next to it. It's massive. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
that's
a
probably
problem.
the best book I bought last year, right?
It's
And,
great.
and it took me quite a while to go through it, because not only did I read the whole book, like the whole 2 volumes, but I tried to just go through like 2 tricks a day slowly, right? And then I would even look at other material I had of Alan Ackerman to compare it. And then I also compared it to his YouTube channel, because I found that he's even already come up with better variations on his YouTube channel than what's in the book.
Wow.
And I've even reverse engineered some of them myself too, which is really hilarious, right? I probably shouldn't say that out loud, right? But it's funny because it does take a certain amount of time dedication to read magic books because, if you try to read it quickly, you won't absorb everything that's there, especially because I'm sure you've read a magic book where you look at tricks. You need to have the cards in your hands, the coins in your hands. You need to go through it slowly. And some books, they're very, very heavy. I don't know if you've ever read like a Tom Gagnon book. Those
Yeah,
books they are chock full of information because I mean he pours his life into a book. And
yeah,
so you may spend a week on one trick because there's like a table spread method that he goes over and he's like trying to teach you how to do a control from a spread and you're like looking at these diagrams and you're like, wow, how the heck does he do that? And then you're like working on it, and then it finally makes sense to you, and you're like, oh, that's how that is. No wonder, right? Like for example, the Alan Ackerman book, right? The very
yeah.
first section of the first volume, it's just moves, right? It's just moves.
Yes, yes, it is. Yeah,
There is one move there that I thought was so good, and it's like a fan control and it was and when you read it, it almost doesn't make sense because you're like, how the heck are you going to close the fan and control the card like that? And it took some time for me to figure out what he really meant. But then when it dawned on me, I was like, oh my God, this is such a good move. Looks so natural. But that's the thing, you have to sit there and toil with it. Because if you just read the book quickly, you're just going to be like, oh man, I don't know. Let's go to the next trick. Oh, I don't know. You know what I mean?
but the problem is, again, it comes back to wanting the newest shiny thing. A lot of people will take the book, flick through it, just quickly read it, and then they'll miss out on gold. Like we were talking off camera about my favorite book of all time, which is David Roth's Expert Coin Magic, because I'm a coin guy, right? Every single time I go back to Expert Coin Magic, I see something new in there that I missed before. Every single time.
Yeah, the coin box magic that's in that book is like it was well ahead of its time, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah, yeah, it was ridiculous. It still is. It's still better than anything else out there when it comes to coin box magic. It's amazing. So, what's your favorite book, David? Out of every book you've read so much, you're so
Oh
well.
man,
What's your
that's a
favorite
really
book?
good question. That's a really good question. I have a lot of books that I keep on my bookshelf because most of my books are in boxes in my basement because the reality is I don't have enough space for them. But there's just so many to just say that what's your favorite magic book of all time? I could tell you as a kid, like when I first started, my favorite magic book when I first started was Now You See It, Now You Don't. That was the first one that
Sure.
was my first magic book that I loved. And the reason was because the images were so easy to understand. It was Bill Tarr. I still
Yeah,
remember it was Bill Tarr, right? And
yeah,
it was like magic with everything, magic with balls, magic with cards, coins, a little bit of everything, right? And
mm,
he put out 2 volumes. I have both of them, right? But the point is that that was the first magic book that I really liked because it was so easy to understand and every effect was good. Like if you go back to that, they were all classics. They were all classics. But I think that just the classics of magic in general are really good. Like if you take any book that's a classic, like if you take like the classic magic of Larry Jennings, right?
yeah,
That whole book is gold.
yes,
Everything in there is amazingly good, right? I mean,
yeah.
take a look at the Stars of Magic. The Stars of Magic, it's like incredibly good,
It
isn't it?
really is. Yeah, you've
Right?
got
I
so
mean,
many. Yeah, it's
all
really.
of that stuff. So it's hard to say what is your favorite, per se. Yeah, I don't know if there's just one, but there's a lot. There's a lot. I mean, look at all the books of Simon Aronson. Simon Aronson's books. Just there's so many. It's like you just get lost. Darwin Ortiz. Just there's so many. It's too many, isn't there?
There
There's
really
just
is.
there's too many, isn't there?
And it's kind of addictive buying books as well. It really is.
Well, think about it. Like, I don't know about your house, but like, I've got magic books everywhere in my house, right? Like, even in this room, which is like a guest room, that I, I mean, look, I got magic books here in this room, and they're just everywhere because there's just not enough space for them, is there?
That's it. That's it. But that's why you're so knowledgeable when you're doing your reviews. And I mentioned this off camera, and I think it's worth mentioning again. One of the things I love about your reviews is if you say something's bad, You don't just say it's bad. You don't just say it's bad because there's something better. I love, and I don't do this. I've never seen anyone else do this actually. I love that you say, I don't like this, but this is why I don't like it. It was done better here, 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 and here. You should look up this by this person in this book, this by this person in this book, and this. That's going to be a better method than what you're seeing here. And it gives you so much credibility that you're not just saying, I don't like this for some arbitrary reason, but you're showing how well read you are, that you're saying, well, this isn't very good. It's only my opinion, but it's not very good because I think this is better. I love that. I really do.
Well, I just try to give people options, right? Especially because people don't have unlimited supply of money to spend on magic. I mean, even those of us that are the most hardcore, right? I mean, even I've tried to just buy the things that I think I'm going to use because the problem is that there's so much stuff that, I'm sure that you have the same thing that's happened to me where I buy a piece of magic and then I just didn't have time to even look at it. So you know what I mean? You still have it there. You haven't even, you technically haven't unboxed it yet for yourself to even look at it, to even learn it, to even use it because you thought to yourself, oh, that's cool. I think I might use that. Let me pick that up before it's sold out. And then you're like, you never really get around to even looking at it. And so you're like, oh geez, like what the heck happened?
Yeah. Been there, bought the t-shirts many, many times over. So what's the right? Okay, I'm going to ask you a question now. And when I told people I was interviewing you, I had 4 or 5 people that wanted me to ask you this question.
Okay.
Is obviously you've published the unbiased ACAN, and then you promoted that you were bringing out the water principle. And genuinely, I think that looks brilliant. I have no idea how it works, and I love the look of it. I really do. And partially in part to me and me being a dick, you said that you weren't going to release it anymore. Um, is there anything that anybody can do to change your mind? Because I'd love to see that come out. I really would. I genuinely mean that. I really, really do. I think it looks great, and I'd love to see that come out. Is there any way? And I had like 5 or 6 people in the comments go, ask him if he's going to change his mind and if he's going to bring out the water principle. So
I'm going to think about it. I'm going to think about it. It really is. It really is good, especially because it's actually multiple principles. But again, you're so far ahead of the spectators. And just if you think about it, where, a deck is completely shuffled and yet you're so far ahead of the spectators, it's really something special. I really do think that, for me at least. And, it's something that I've just been using myself, like now almost a year now, just nonstop, really. So, and because it's something that you could just show up and be like, take out your deck, let's go. You can go right into it. So when you think about it, it really is very, very strong. And I've put together, like when I put that project together, I had 10 effects, and this was designed so that way it's like a set. So you start kind of like with effect one, and it just kind of just goes right into it. And ultimately the best effect on there that I thought was the best effect was the effect where I put the card on the table, right? And then
yeah,
they select a card, and then some other things happen. They select a card, it goes in their pocket, a bunch of other things happen, and then later turn over the card on the table, they take the card out of their pocket and it matches. It's like the prediction's been out there the whole time before you even started. So it's really good. It was really, really good effect. It's really good effect. Yeah, it was really good. It's really good. So, and that's how I designed it, was to kind of culminate, but it was modular. You didn't have to do all the effects. You could just do a couple of them. And I tried to like really hone in on the classics of mentalism with playing cards, at least, like with playing cards, like, like emulating the Mockingbird, the Max Maven Mockingbird, but without without all of the procedure that you see with the Mockingbird, because the Mockingbird was a good effect, but the problem is that you had to divide the deck up into quarters, and there was this very restrictive procedure. Whereas if you could just give out the deck to be shuffled cleanly, like that's a whole nother story. When you just be like, shuffle the deck, guys. Like that feels so fair. Like what the heck is going on here, right? Like that's like, yes. So yeah, I'm gonna think about it, Craig. I really do. I thought, I think that when I first announced it, I was really excited until I saw like the feedback I got in the Magic Cafe. Remember,
Well,
like I wrote
I was actually
I
really
wrote like
positive.
those. Well, because a lot of people were like, "Oh, so what?" And so then I was like, "Oh, okay. I guess
Well,
that's
I
not a
saw the
big
first
deal
video
then."
and I'm like, this is really good. I really liked the first video. The first video was really good because I could see how I could use something like that. And I love it when I see something and I don't necessarily go, I would do it that way. But like when you look at something and you think, oh, but if I could do that, then I could do this. And it solves a problem that I've had with something else. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
Get excited. So I was getting really excited. And then when I saw the second video you put out with the two spectators, I was like, oh, this is just amazing. This is killer.
But you could see how I've tried to structure the magic I come up with for two people at the same time. And you could see how powerful that is for two
Yeah.
people at the same time, because you're doing so much all at once that anybody else watching would be like again, they can't figure out, they won't even have a clue what you're doing, because when you're working with one person, right, there's only so much you're doing and people can kind of get an idea of what's going on. But when you're working with two people at the same time, it's like a compounded thing. They can't keep up. They can't keep up with what you're doing because
Mhm.
you're just moving in two directions at the same time. But for you, it's all part of your routine. So for you, you're moving at your speed. It looks natural. It looks like you're not doing anything. You're just doing it. It's almost like as if the magic is just happening to these two people. And you
Yeah.
and you saw the reactions I got
Hmm.
from them. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you see the guy how floored he was?
Yes, I did. It's killer. It's
It was funny,
really,
wasn't it?
yeah, really, really was. And I looked at it, I was like, I really want to learn this. So yeah, people have asked. I really do. Please reconsider. Please at least consider reconsidering. Because I think there's certain things that are brought out in the community and they add no value to to the history of magic at all. But I think that what I've seen with this project already, and what you've shown on video, and what you've just told me, wow, I'd love to see it come out. I really would.
Yeah, it was actually really good. There were a number of other demo videos that I made of it, of the other effects, and so I was slowly working on it because I was trying to I was trying to make it more robust, because at first it was just going to be instructional videos. And then when I saw those negative comments, I thought, oh man, these people don't think this is good. Then I thought, well, maybe I'll make some demo videos and put them on my channel and see what kind of reactions I get, because I thought it was good,
Mm.
right? I mean, my spectators, you saw what they thought. I didn't
Yeah.
need to say anything, right? I mean, funny parts of this, Craig, is that what happens is this, is that I've used that most at work when like things die down and it's like 2 in the morning, and maybe I'm on one floor and I'm at the nurse's station, and the nurses come over with like the deck of cards that's like from the nurse's station. It's like, the deck that's been there, the old deck, and they're like, "Hey, show us something cool." And then, because they all know that I do magic, so then I'd be like, okay, here, guys, let's do something cool. And I'll be like, here, well, I'm going to use two of you, and then just go right into it with them. And so that's that was my way of road testing it, and the reactions I got were so strong. And I thought to myself, this is actually something really good. This is good. And the idea of being able to clock a deck in under 10 seconds, right? That's
That's
that's really
insane.
not, I don't know. I've never seen anybody else do it unless they have like some kind of special photographic memory. And my
Yeah.
technique doesn't rely on any of that kind of stuff, because if you watch even like people that are really good at it, they take, almost 30 seconds really to, and that's just clocking one color.
Yeah. It's not an easy thing to do. I mean,
I mean, they
yeah.
have to add up all values and stuff. And so all of that's too slow. And you can see that the magic that I like, the mentalism I like, is ones that cut down on all of that. Because the way for it to be really amazing is it has to be instant.
Yes.
Because when you're doing a lot of procedure, it doesn't feel magical, right? That's why when I do my day of the week, that's why it's so good, because it's instant. It's right there. They tell me, and then I'm like, oh, this is the day. And they're like, no. I'm like, go ahead, look it up, right? And that's the thing, is that when you're that fast, right? When you have methods that will get you there that fast, that really feels magical. I mean, I tell my patients, oh, it's just I've got it's just good math. That's what I say to them when they say, how do you do that? I say, oh, it's just a calculation. It's just good math. Oh, no, that's really incredible. Like, you see what I mean though? Like, to them it's magical, even though you're telling them that it's just a calculation. Like, to them, doesn't matter what you say. They've just seen something that they've never seen in their entire life. So
Yeah.
you've just blown their mind. I mean, I guess that's what magic is when you think about it, right? Isn't that what magic is?
Yeah, that is.
Right.
That's exactly what it is. That's
Right?
a killer.
Like when I was a resident, I remember I did this trick for one of my resident mates, and literally what he did was this. He just ran, grabbed another resident, came over and said, "You gotta watch this." That was it. That was his reaction. Yeah, he was like, "No, you gotta watch this. You gotta watch what he does." And that was like the crazy reaction. And I was like, "Wow," he was really impressed by that, you know. And you don't really realize it until you're doing it for people up close, and you start to see those reactions. And so you can see, though, I really did think that that was a good project. And then the negative feedback I got on the Magic Cafe made me think like, oh, maybe I really shouldn't release this. I thought to myself, and part of it too was that I felt like those people were undeserving.
Yeah.
Because think about it, Craig. This is not something I came up with in 5 minutes. You know what I mean? Like, this
No.
took a lot of time to come up with. And
Yeah.
so you think to yourself, is it really worth sharing in that way? Because you think to yourself, like, this is almost like as if it's your baby, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you're like, do you want this to fall into the hands of somebody who's undeserving? You think to
Yeah.
yourself, I don't know, that's why you think that way, so.
I,
But
I
yeah, but I'll reconsider. I'll think about it, definitely.
Yeah,
Because,
because the Magic Cafe shouldn't be considered a benchmark. It's not exactly warm and fuzzy at the best of times. But I know exactly what you mean. It's hard as somebody who puts magic out myself. I struggle openly when I see a negative review. It's partially because I know I've worked so hard on it, and I've tried to make it the best it can be, and I've got it to a point where I'm like, okay, nothing else I can do with this now. So when you see a negative review, it's kind of like, you know what I mean? It makes you feel bad. It makes you feel bad inside. So,
Well, and it's not just that. I mean, think about it. I mean, the magic that I come up with, it's just me, right? It's just me. And then, and the very few people that I've showed something to see what their reaction is, right? But you guys have a whole team of people, don't you?
well, I mean, it's generally just me, but if I work with Murphys, I'll typically be working with the Murphys team. So they'll bring me into, I might be working with George or Titanus or Lloyd or Javier or something like that. So yeah, there's a team of us when it comes to the Murphys stuff, but a lot of anything I've brought out, like Chop, for example, I know you like Chop. Chop was just me. Chop was nobody. I went to Penguin and said, "This is Chop," and they were like, "Yep, let's do it." So
Right. Like your flipper coin DV, that was you.
that was just me. Yeah, that was just me. A lot of the coin stuff, pretty much all the coin stuff. If it's with Murphys, I can be part of a team, or they like to put input in. But a lot of the time with Penguin or with Alakazam and places like that, yeah, it tends to be just me. Although Pete Nardi, I don't know how well you know Pete. Pete's very knowledgeable. He's a really knowledgeable guy, and he'll always give his two pence worth. And normally he's got some really smart ideas.
Yeah. Yeah. He put out the Stealth Assassin wallet.
That's the guy.
Right.
Yeah,
Right. That's the guy. Yep. Yep. Because everybody, I think everybody at one point bought a Stealth Assassin wallet. I actually have a video like performing it, like, I don't know, 15 years ago or something. Like, it's really old. It's a really old video, like performing it like at a party. And it was like, and it was the Stealth Assassin wallet. And I still recommend it to people all the time. I always tell them because it has some nice features in it.
it stood the test of time, and it was nice that
Yeah.
Pete contacted Mark Strivings and asked for permission to use the SUC peak, because up until that point, a lot of people had been using it without his permission. So it was nice that Pete, I don't know what deal he came to, but he came to a deal to allow the Stealth Assassin wallet to have the SUC peak in it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And that's the thing, is that there's still more mentalism wallets being released every day, but
So
I
many
don't,
wallets. As a reviewer, Dave,
yeah.
I don't know if you find this. I can't keep up with the amount of wallets that come out. Like every day, there's more wallets. I'm like, how many more wallets do I need?
I don't know, but I haven't found one better than the Viper wallet. Like I still think that's the best wallet because you can peek a folded card
Mm,
and you can't do that with any other wallet. It has multiple different peek options in it. It has that sight unseen case feature,
yeah.
enabling you to work one behind or one ahead. It's got a lot of different things in it that you can't do with other mentalism wallets. And the most important thing is that you seemingly do not need to reopen the wallet to get the peek,
Mm.
which that's probably the most important thing. Like I think anyone who's looking for a mentalism wallet, they should say, do I have to reopen this to get the peak? The answer no, then it's good. Then it's good. Because otherwise, you know, then you lose the sense of magic.
Yeah, yeah. Whenever I do a peak, I always use the SUC peak for that reason because I don't have to open the wallet. I can get the peak as I put the wallet away.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And with that Viper, there's other methods too where you're just picking up the wallet and putting it in your pocket, moving it to grab something else, and you already got your peak. And just the idea of the folded card, it's pure gold
Well, I'm
because
going
a
to be honest.
folded card,
I've never seen the Viper wallet. I'm going to have to pick that up because that sounds.
really,
Yeah, I've never seen it. I must have missed that. Did it come out a few years ago?
maybe like 5 years ago, something
Because
like
if you
4 years
remember,
ago.
before I started my YouTube channel, I kind of taken a step back from magic for like a decade. So I have a bit of. I wasn't buying magic all the time over that period, so I missed a lot
Right.
of stuff that came out over then. So
Yeah.
that might have been the thing. I'll definitely have to check that out. That sounds great.
Yeah, no, no, it's especially for people that want to carry a mentalism wallet, then I think it's fine. It's okay. I don't think there's anything wrong with that at all. I don't know. I'll take it someplace if I know I'm gonna do magic for people, but like at work, I don't have enough pocket space for it.
I know what you mean. So let me ask you one more question, David.
Sure.
Which is one final question. What's your plans moving forward? What are your goals? Because let's be honest. I mean, you started this channel with zero expectations. You've built it up to genuinely have not such a loyal fan base of people that will literally get super excited every single time you drop a video for good reason. You've become a very respected magic reviewer in the industry. You've released magic. You've shown me just on this video other magic that you could release. You've talked about writing a book at some point in the future. What do you but obviously also you're a full-time doctor, so that's your main gig. Like, what magical goals or things on your magical bucket list have you got left that you want to do? Is there something that you kind of go, you know what?
Well, there's quite a few things. Like I've actually, one thing that there's a couple of things I really want to do, like, but there's one thing particular which is like I want to do like a fundraiser for the hospital, like a Christmas fundraiser, like actually put on a real show, like as a
Yeah,
fundraiser, like a real show for them, But that's just like for me, like for me, like for something like that. But for my channel, I guess what I really want to do is to just this is what my thoughts are now is I'm going to try to really focus on reviewing products that I really endorse, that I really
yeah,
believe in, just because I realize that, negative reviews in general, and I'm not saying either that I'm going to say like, oh, I'm not going to review product and just say, oh, this is 100%, like no product is 100%, but
no,
be like, this product has these positives, these negatives, but overall, this is why I would recommend it, and always give extra other options like what we talked about because everybody's different, and some people might resonate more with one type of effect than another. Some people might not mind sleight of hand. Other people, specifically like difficult sleight of hand. Other people might be like, oh, I'm looking for something a little bit easier to do. I mean, when
yeah,
you think about it, even the for what you I would consider to be like the easiest sleight of hand in terms of mentalism, other people would have a hard time. Some other people don't want to deal with that. Like even just the idea of just doing an unfold switch in front of a spectator, right?
mhm,
Where you've literally switched out one for the other right in front of them. Some people, they really don't want to do that. So, but yeah, that's really my goal is to try to just continue with good quality reviews and just good quality videos in general, just as I go through it. Because for me, you have to understand, I'm sure your channel is the same way, is that a lot of the stuff that I review is almost in a way, it's like notes for yourself. Because a lot of the stuff you put out there, later on, you go back to it and say, oh, wait, yeah, I did do a review on that effect. Let me go and look at it and see, because, it's been a while since I looked at it, or, one thing or the other. But yeah, that's really my goal. Just because after everything that's happened, especially recently, I realize that what really matters in Magic more than anything else is just our experiences with spectators. And really, social media has become so toxic in general. It
Yes.
is. And it's easy to get caught up in the drama. It's very easy to be like, start fighting with somebody, and it's back and forth. And I know I'm right, you're wrong. I'm right, you're wrong. People that watch your channel is like, yeah, you're right, they're wrong, and all this stuff. And so then you've lost the sense of what you're doing, because you're
Yeah.
no longer doing what you're no longer doing what you want to do. And
Yeah.
that's what I'm trying to. So I'm going to try to just focus on really reviewing products that I think are really good, that will help people. And just like I always do, really road test everything that I review, so that way, you can stand behind it, because
Yeah.
then you don't want to just, I mean, and it's nothing, I'm not trying to say anything negative about unboxers, because I guess they have their own place too, right? They have their
Yeah.
own place in the community as well. But the truth is that I think that for the average person that has a limited amount of money to spend, they want to buy what they're going to get the most bang out of their buck for,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
we think about it, Craig. If you could only do 5 effects for the rest of your life, you want to do the 5 strongest things you could do for you. And
Yes.
for you, one effect may be a lot stronger than another. For you, that effect may be with a deck of cards. For you, that may be with, a couple of coins, right? I mean, and really, it's hard to really quantify what's the best. What's
Yes.
the best, right? How do you quantify that, right?
Yeah.
How do you quantify that, right,
It's
Craig?
impossible, right? It's impossible. Yeah.
Right. And I've had the conversation multiple times with other magicians like Michael Bowden, and we have a hard time coming to terms with it. Like I've looked at all of Michael Bowden's magic, and some of his magic is so impressive that I've reviewed on my channel. Like I told Mike, like this effect of his, some of his effects that I've reviewed them on my channel. You can see them. They're so impressive because the spectator is like, wait, what the heck just happened?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely. Yeah. 100. That's the sort of thing that we should be doing. For me, that's exactly the same. I'm going to be spending more time doing the type of videos that I want to do, giving advice, giving support, giving guidance, as much positivity as I can. I completely agree with you. I do have one final thing before we wrap this up, which is you told me off camera, David, that you have never attended a magic convention.
Right. No.
That blows my mind because you love magic. It's obvious to anybody that you love magic. You walk into any magic convention, there's going to be a bunch of people that would recognize who you are because of you running your YouTube channel, right? There's going to be a bunch of people that recognize who you are. Um, and I suppose the question is, it's not like you're a doctor. You're going to have the money to go to a magic convention. I know you're very very busy, but I guess you could find time if you wanted to. Is there been a reason up until now you've never attended a convention?
I don't probably just because I saw conventions as more like places where you could just go to buy magic. You know what I mean? Like that's what it looked like to me. And since I was already buying magic anyway, and another reason is because none of them were close by to where I was, you
Hmm.
know. And so, but I think it would be a great experience, and more than anything, just to perform magic for other magicians. Because when I went to that magic club in Las Vegas, when I went to Alan Ackerman's magic club, I was very surprised to see that a lot of the people at that magic club, they didn't even perform anything. They were just there watching, you know what I
Hmm.
mean? And so, because in my mind, I just imagine that any magician would be more than eager to perform at the drop of a hat. Like,
Hmm.
you know what I mean? Like if you were to go to a magic club or to that's why my thought process, if I go to a magic convention, I would be actually just looking to see who I could do something for. I would just be like, you know what I mean? Like I would be like, okay, it's time to try out some new material here, like go around and perform for fellow magicians and just see what kind of reactions you get. Because in my mind, that's what it would be. Because you have other people that are like-minded, that like magic, they want to watch magic. Because think about it, lay people have a very short attention span, which is why most of the magic I come up with is very quick. It's very right to the point because people don't have any attention. But another magician will sit there for a couple of minutes and watch everything slowly because they're very interested already. You've
Yes.
already got their attention, right? So
Yes.
yeah, so
Definitely.
that's what I think that would be really fun to do, to go to a magic convention. But yeah,
Well,
up until now, I don't know why I just never went to one.
well, I want to invite you to the Blackpool Magic Convention because what you have just described is the Ruskin. The convention bar is the
Oh,
Ruskin,
is it?
about 2 minutes away from where the main convention's held. And there will be people in there until 6 o'clock in the morning every night, sitting around. It's a huge place, hundreds of magicians just sessioning, just showing each other tricks constantly. And you'll have people sitting in there like, oh, there's Michael Amar. Oh, there's this person, there's that person. You can just go sit down with them and just it's amazing. And it's for me, I've always said that the biggest part of the Blackpool Magic Convention is going into the Ruskin, and just the best magic you see isn't in the dealer hall. The best magic you see isn't at the lectures. The best magic you see is when you go into that bar and you're sitting down with somebody who's not famous, who nobody knows who they are, but it's this person that's got this incredible version of this, and they're blowing everyone's mind with it. And I think from what you've told me, you would love the Blackpool Magic Convention, especially being in the Ruskin. And I want to invite you. I'd love you to come along at some point. I think you'd have a blast, David. I really do.
Oh, it would be great. Yeah.
Yeah, you should come along, definitely. I mean, it's a seaside town in the UK in February. You'll freeze your ass off. Bring a warm coat. But and I hope you like fish and chips because that's all we have. But in terms of the
Yeah.
magic, the magic is incredible.
Oh,
So
well, I live in Wisconsin, so it's cold here most of the year. So,
you'll be
yeah.
fine. You'll be fine. That's amazing. David, I want to say thank you for coming on the channel. I really do.
Thanks
And
for having me.
I'm so glad that we've drawn a line under things, and we've been chatting. I'm glad that you've given me a chance to interview you. And like we've said off camera, I really hope we continue to chat. I really do, because we've got a lot in common when we're not arguing.
Right.
We've got a lot
Well,
in
and
common.
not just that, I think that we could have like a healthy argument too.
Yeah, I do. I agree. I agree. I think we need
Right?
to do that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, of course. I mean, and I think that that's actually a good way to be constructive and to, further things, in terms of having like a healthy debate. But yeah, I'm glad that we could just get over that because it just wasn't going good for any
No,
of us. It wasn't good, and it was just not good for the community as a whole. Really, the community should embrace everyone in it as much as you can, as much as you can, and just try to focus on good things because magic should be a fun thing. It should be a fun hobby. It should be just a fun thing for all of us because, that's how we all got into it because it was a very magical experience when we were kids, right?
yeah, yeah, it was. Yeah, and obviously my son does magic, my daughter does magic, and one of the reasons that I'm so constantly in love with it, and that's never gone away, is because I see it through his eyes. He's 12 years old, and magic is just all super exciting and wonderful. And I think sometimes we have to get back to that, and
Right.
not let stuff get in the way. But yeah, and on that, before I wrap this whole thing up, I will say I'd love to. I've got when I create magic, I've got a circle of people that I send things to get their opinion on before it even gets to a point where it's released. And I'd love to be in a situation where I could send you something because you are so knowledgeable. I'd love to get your input on stuff that I'm creating because I think that your input would be so valuable to any creator. I really do.
I don't know. Some people do send me like in terms of like if you watch the review I put out yesterday, it was a mentalism project that the mentalist watched my top 5 review, was inspired by one of the effects, and then worked on that and furthered it. And he sent me a message and he said, "Hey, David, I'm working on this project." And he introduced it to me. And the first thing I said to him was like, "Hey, dude, don't send this out to a lot of people. Someone's going to steal your ideas." That's the first thing I said to him. Because he
Mm,
said to me, "Oh, I sent this to two other people." And I said to him, "You shouldn't do that." I said, "You have to be careful who you send stuff to because
yeah.
people will steal your ideas." And it's actually funny, Craig, because there are actually some very famous mentalists that send me some stuff of theirs to look at. And I even tell them, like, don't send this to just anybody. They're, "Oh, no, I'm not," and stuff. And because I feel like worried for them, you know what I mean? And some of them have
Mm,
even told me stories of how they've had things ripped off from them, you
mm,
know? And
happens.
so, but
Yeah.
you know, because at least you can get, some feedback. And I think that review I did yesterday, that project, I think that was a really good project. And you should when you get a chance, watch the review, you'll see
Well,
it.
as I said to you off camera, I saw it. I was at a gig yesterday. I saw it pop up. So I after I finish this interview with you, I'm going to go and watch it straight away.
Yeah, because there was some stuff that he sent me that was like just rubbish. And I said, no, 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 you got to get rid of this stuff. And so I mean, I understand that maybe he got offended by that, but like I was just totally honest. I was like, no, this has got to go for these reasons. And I think sometimes people need to hear that because,
Yeah.
it's better you hear that before you release something, right?
That's why I'd like to show you stuff because I'd rather hear it then than when it comes out. 100%. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's great. We'll definitely do that. And David, honestly, one more time, thank you so much for coming on the channel. I really appreciate
Oh,
it.
thanks for having me.
No problem. Guys, if you're watching this, I want you to do two things. Number one, I want you to comment down below. Let David know what you thought of the interview. I found it absolutely fascinating. But then, secondly, if you haven't already done so, please head over to Unbiased Magic Reviews. There's going to be a link in the description down below, and click on it and hit subscribe. And then start off by watching all of David's 5 best videos because they are phenomenal, and I can highly recommend them. So go over and subscribe. And I will see you next Saturday with another interview. But until then, one more time, David, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me, Craig.
No problem. Guys, I'll see you again soon. My name's Craig Petty. This is David Laden, and this has been Talk Magic.